Have to be down to Research Centre. And can we have the lights on? So this is a project that we started in Calcutta in 2009. As you can see, it's aiming to be a complete Vaishnava literary resource and the Vedic Cosmology Library, which is being developed to support the work that we're going to be presenting in Mayapur at the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. So this is our logo. We chose the banyan tree because Krishna says that of trees he is the banyan, tree of life, tree of knowledge, so it's kind of symbolic. And this is based on several instructions Prabhupada gave. In August of '76 he had just returned to Bombay and he met with Giriraj, who was the temple president, and one of his former servants, Nitai Das. And he instructed them to start a first-class library where people could come and study Vaishnavism and become convinced of the philosophy. And he said that that library should have all of his own books, those of all the Acharyas, which means the other Vaishnava lines like Ramanuja and Madhva, as well as the Upanishads and bona fide Vedic texts. Somehow or another they didn't manage to get this done. This was intended for Juhu Beach Temple. So when we started this project in 2009, I thought this was a good opportunity to try to fulfill that desire of Srila Prabhupada. This is our building. It's bigger than it looks. You can see there ISKCON and Bhaktivedanta Research Centre. It's 5 floors actually. And we'll have a look inside. One of the inspirations for doing this project came from Pranava Prabhu, who you see here. He got his PhD on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his life and teachings. He's a tenured professor at Stockholm University, and he's our co-director, academic director. So his thesis was published by the Oxford University Press, very prestigious. And if you don't have this book, I highly recommend it. You can get it on Amazon. And he goes into some detail about the history of the development of Krishna consciousness in the modern day, from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and especially through Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. We have an advisory board. Krishna Chetra Swami is a PhD from Oxford. Pradyumna Prabhu was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor throughout the whole time that Prabhupada was on the planet, in ISKCON, that is. Lucien Wong and Remba Lutjams are both Oxford scholars, studying for their PhDs. And we opened officially June 30th, 2009, so that's just 6 years ago. Jagtaka Maharaj, Bhakti Maharaj were there. This is Mr. Shyam Sukha. He's the one who donated the building to us. This is what we started with. It was just a big empty hall. It was kind of very dilapidated and run down. So it took about 6 months of hard work, and we transformed that space into a nice library. This is fully air conditioned and everything is of course computerized. Just recently we've added some study partitions for students. We've got a rare books secure section. And in the floor below we installed this moving rack, which we were fortunate to get from a bankruptcy sale in Calcutta. These normally cost $10,000 to $20,000. We got this for about 1 lakh. Very useful because you can use it like a concertina. You can open it up and close it up and lock it. So it's good for archival. And we're just about to install a couple of fireproof cabinets for all the rare items. So we began with 4,000 titles. Our current catalogue is 20,000. And we also have a digital library of manuscripts, about 1,250. We'll have a look at the core collection. This was a body of work, about 2,500 items that belonged to Sundarananda Vijay. This is him as a student, this is him as a Sanskrit professor from Dhaka, and he joined up with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, became one of the prominent literary figures in the Gaudiya Math, and he was the custodian of the original library established at the Bagbazar Gaudiya Math in Calcutta by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So you could say that library was virtually Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's personal library. When the Gaudiya Math broke up, there was some threat to the library, so Sundarananda took the library to his home, and it stayed there for 70 years. And then finally his relatives gave the entire collection to Gopinath Gaudiya Math, that's Bibi Bhadayan Maharaj, she's a friend of ours, and he very generously placed the entire library in our hands. So we made a little agreement there and brought all the books to the library in Calcutta. So we'll have a look at a few of the items that are in there just to give you an idea. This is an original print of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts. That was printed in 1896, the year of Prabhupada's birth, which Prabhupada said was not a coincidence. This was the first attempt to preach in English the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in other parts of the world. This we found is an original photograph of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, the only known one in the world. You can see his finger and his bead back there. And we think this was taken around about the time when he confirmed the discovery of Lord Chaitanya's birthplace in 1877. So he must have been about 120 years old at this point when that was taken. This was one of the very important sections of Sundarananda's collection. These are copies of all the different periodicals that the Gaudiya Math were publishing. The Nadia Prakash was a daily newspaper, the Gaudiya was a weekly, Sajantoshni was a monthly, the Harmonist was the English version of the Sajantoshni, and the Bhagavad was the Hindi version. So what you see here is every single issue, let's say like the Nadia Prakash, that means 365 issues a year, were carefully kept and bound up into multiple volumes for posterity. You can see the condition that they were in when we received them. All the covers were eaten off and falling off. This is a complete collection of the Harmonist. It goes from 1927 to 1937. This is in English. And this is the Nadia Prakash. It was a 4-page newspaper. There was 2 pages of mundane news, ordinary news, and then there was 2 pages of spiritual news. So in that way it was a kind of a device to get ordinary people to buy the newspaper and have some contact with Krishna Kirtan. And the interesting thing, of course, is that most of the articles were not just philosophical, but there were lots of news items about the development of the Gaudiya Math preaching. So in the many years that this was published, you have a gradual reportage of the development of the Gaudiya Math under Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So historically it's extremely important. It's the history of our movement. This is the Hindi version from 1931. Apart from the periodicals, we found some really unusual items. This book was entitled Bibliotheca Indica, and it had a series of blank pages in the back of it, and somebody stuck in there a whole bunch of newspaper clips written by Babu Kedarnath Dutt, or in other words Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he was the Deputy Collector and Magistrate in Jagannath Puri. So it says thoughts on popular topics or occasional notes. He was writing poems, and they were being published in the newspaper. One of the poems is the famous one about HariDas Thakur, and it contains, of course, that verse in Regions who tells that Vaishnavas died. When thou art living still in sound, the Vaishnavas started to live and living, trying to spread a holy life around. We normally print that as the holy name around, but this is probably the first time this was ever published, and it uses the phrase the holy life around. All of the articles were signed, a Sharagrahi Vaishnav. This one is dated Puri, 29th of August, 1871, so that's like 145 years or more ago. So very fortunately they were clipping these printings out and they stuck them all in the back of this book. This is original poetry, reflections, alas for those that spend their days in festive mirth and joy, the dazzling deadly liquid forms their hearts for air employ. This is the famous drinker's song, and how those drunkards can be rescued by Krishna consciousness. You can see the condition of the work there, all eaten by bugs, crinkling up, disintegrating because of the heat and humidity. So we got to this just in time. We found in the same section of the book, this is a verse written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur to celebrate the birth of his son, Lalit Prasad. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur calculated the horoscope of Lalit Prasad. There's 8 pages of this actually. You can see the different astrological periods. He learned astrology when he was 12 years old. So not only was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati an astrologer, so was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But this is quite a fun. This is a 1-page letter that he sent to his home in 1871. You can see his signature there in Bengali script. And this is a piece of a manuscript that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was working on. It was identified by Sundarananda specifically as such. So that gave us a sample of his writing that we could compare other works with. And this was probably the most amazing find in that collection. This is maybe the first modern Vaishnava songbook. This is all the songs that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, and he hand wrote them all and put them in this one volume. There's a couple of hundred pages there of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs in his own handwriting. This is Gaigol Madhu Surai. That's the Hare Krishna mantra, written out by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Bengali. And these are some of the songs that are in that book. All the popular ones: Sharanagati, Radhastaka, Shikshastaka, Prasad songs, Bhogarati, etc., etc., Gora Arati. It's all there in his own handwriting. Then apart from the handwritten stuff, he was also a prolific publisher. So this is a copy of an original print of his commentary on the Gita. Many of the books that we have are out of print, they're very rare. This is a copy of his 2-volume work on Padma Purana. This is in Sanskrit. It was a compilation of 6 or 7 different commentaries, all put together in one work. And apart from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's works, or handwriting, we also found some handwriting samples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He was writing articles and sending them to Sundarananda, because Sundarananda was the editor of the Gaudiya, the weekly periodical. So he saved, fortunately, he saved some of those original drafts of work. You can see there it says the Gaudiya printing works. That's from the Bagbazar temple. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati installed a printing press in full view of the deities in the temple, because he said they were enjoying seeing the transcendental literature being published from there. This is his signature, and if we take a close look at that, it says Nitya Ashurvadika Siddhanta Saraswati. It literally means Nitya, eternal, and Ashurvadika means I'm giving you blessings. So that's where Prabhupada got the terminology, you're a well-wisher, which was the way that he signed all of his letters. He got it as a direct translation from his spiritual master. This is a 1-sheet list of academic disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. he was going to start this Thakur Bhaktivinoda Research Institute. This was a building that was built next to the Yog Pit, the birth site of Lord Chaitanya, and it was intended to be an academic level Vaishnava theological college, but somehow or another, of course, it never happened. The buildings were eventually taken over by the government, and now it's a Mundan school. But we have a plan to revive this project in Mayapur. This is an original print of Saraswati Jayashree, which was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's biography. There's a series of chapters written by different disciples, and it was meant to be a series of 3 or 5 books, but only this one ever came out in 1934. It's never been translated into English. And what we found was 2 copies of what was going to be the 2nd volume. And it was not published, but it was printed in draft. So this is 135 pages of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati recalling his childhood growing up as the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur up to the age of 18. So it's virtually an autobiography. So this has never been seen either in Bengali or in English. So we translated this. We hope we're going to get this out by the end of this year. This was very important. This says the last wishes of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, 31st of December 1936 at 10:30 a.m. This is the last will of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, about 16 hours before he left the planet. Interestingly, it's written, all the 12 points are written in English, and they're witnessed by 4 different disciples. For us, the important one was number 2, form a governing body of 10 to 12 persons for management of the mission's work. That was the instruction that Prabhupada said had been given, and the disobedience of that in not forming a governing body led to the very rapid breakdown of the Gaudiya mission, or the Gaudiya Math. But here we have it in writing that he wanted to have a governing body, and therefore Prabhupada, as soon as he could, established the GBC for ISKCON. Apart from his transcendental writings, he was publishing in the early part of the 20th century this Jyotirvid, which is an astronomical periodical, and this is very important. We found a series of these because we're going to be presenting Vedic cosmology in Mayapur in the new temple. This will give us a lot of background information how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was seeing the universe through astronomical eyes, if you like. This is an original print of Bangani Samagikata from 1899. This was the first work that Bhaktisiddhanta wrote, which was not astrological or astronomical. It means the social life of the people of Bengal. You can see the deterioration from the books. Fortunately, the contents were okay. This is very interesting. This is an Indian government survey map of Nadia district from 1918. 1918, of course, was the year that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took sannyas in Mayapur. And if we look at that, you've got Navadvip there, you've got the Ganges there, you've got the Jalangi here. This is Swarup Ganj, Mahesh Ganj, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living. And just here is the Yog Pit, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. And in direct line of sight from the two is where ISKCON Mayapur is building the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a vision of a transcendental city twice when he looked out towards Mayapur. And so we're hoping that what he saw is what we're building. The old name is given, Miyapur. Prabhupada mentions that in the purport of the Chaitanya Tritamrita. So that's the state of Mayapur 100 years ago. Nothing. Just a couple of houses here and there. Even the Yog Pit's not marked on this yet. So that's a few things from Sundarananda's collection. The other books that we have on our shelves belong to Achyuta Prabhu. He's an Italian. He's our English language librarian. and he's an avid book collector, so he's got about 16,000 volumes, which he hopes to persuade us to buy from him. In the meantime, we got them on the shelves. All kinds of stuff, Vedic sciences and mathematics, Puri, Kirtan, Vedanta Sutra, 200 versions of the Gita, etc., etc. So we've been cataloguing these. Some of the rare things that he found, this is an original print of Sri Krishna Chaitanya by Nishikant Sanyal. That was commissioned by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. It's an English work on the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It was specifically written so that the party that went to London in 1933, which is when this volume was published, they would have something to hand out to people to explain their mission. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would not allow those devotees to leave until this book was published. It says volume 1, volume 2 was never written, apparently. But anyway, that's an original. This is a commemorative booklet glorifying Bhaktivinoda Thakur 2 years after his disappearance in 1916. This is, okay. This is a blank out. What happened there? Just what's going on? This is a volume that was put out by the University of Calcutta 100 years ago about medieval Vaishnava literature of Bengal. Very important reference work. Chaitanya Chandrodaya by Kavi Karnapura, that was published in 1885. This is a very important find. This is the Bhagavad Gita translation by Charles Wilkins. It was the first time the Gita was translated into English and actually printed. And that was done in, the original came out in 1785. This is the Bhagavad Gita that was being read by Thoreau and Whitman and all these American transcendentalists. And Tutor found this original third edition print from 1845. It was just lying around in a second-hand bookstore in Calcutta. This is collected works of Sir William Jones. William Jones was a brilliant scholar. He was fluent in 14 languages. He had a good working knowledge of 29 other languages. He was one of the first of the Western scholars to come and start translating from Sanskrit into English. He died in 1795. This volume was published in 1799. So it's a couple of hundred years old. Coming closer to home, this is of course Jananivas Prabhu from Mayapur. I asked him to open up Prabhupada's Almira in his bedroom in Mayapur. We found 20 postcards addressed to Srila Prabhupada. You can see the name there, Abhay Charanaravindo Bhaktivedanta. So even in 1949, Prabhupada was using the title Bhaktivedanta. This is a very far out letter. I don't know exactly why Prabhupada saved it, but I'm glad he did. It's a letter from the Governor's Secretariat in Bihar. His Excellency the Governor will be glad to see you, but he'll have no talk with you about the publication of your books. He cannot give you any help in that respect. It will not be possible for His Excellency to approach any publishers, nor can he give any financial assistance. So it seems that Prabhupada had been trying to hit up the Governor for some help with his books. In these circumstances, it is not worthwhile for you to incur the expenditure of coming over to Patna. So, no help with your books, no publishers, no finances, and don't even bother coming. But if you still want to come, let me know. We'll fix the time up. And you're also advised not to send the manuscripts to His Excellency. So this is a kind of like the ultimate rejection letter. And what does Prabhupada do? Does he get discouraged? Absolutely not. I have no intention to disturb His Excellency the Governor for some financial help in respect to publishing my works. I have to seek an interview with His Excellency on a cultural and peace mission only. So Prabhupada still went ahead despite all that rejection. And on the day that he had the meeting, he advertised it to the local press. Abhay Charanaravindo Bhaktivedanta, editor of Bhakti Godhead Calcutta, has come to Patna on a cultural peace mission. So that was Prabhupada, completely indomitable. You couldn't spoil his enthusiasm, and working very hard. We found some original copies of Bhakti Godhead. This is the famous Truth and Beauty edition from 1958. This is the Bhagavad Darshan that he was publishing simultaneously in Hindi. Then we also, this is a very important historical document. This is signed by Srila Prabhupada. It is the power of attorney that was issued by Prabhupada to Tamal Krishna Maharaj to go to Mayapur and purchase the first land on behalf of ISKCON. So that's dated the 12th of April 1971. So that's a little bit of our Mayapur history. Apart from that, we collect other items. We have the personal archive of Sariputta Prabhu. This is from 1976. This is the first meeting of the newly formed Bhaktivedanta Institute. Swarup Damodar, Sariputta, Rupanuga, Madhava, and there were several others. They came to meet with Prabhupada. Sariputta was the one who really cracked open the 5th canto and convinced us that we could actually present the 5th canto, Cosmology, in Mayapur. And the work that he did to establish that, of course, is this Vedic cosmography and astronomy. So Sariputta was a true genius, there's no question of that. Unfortunately, he left the planet in 2008. So we were fortunate that his widow sent us his entire personal archive. And just this last year, this is Krishna Kripa Prabhu, who was Sariputta's assistant. He came and spent a month at the library. He unpacked all the 17 boxes, categorized all the contents in different ways, and now that's ready and available for research. Very important. Nishringananda Prabhu from ITV saw me make a similar presentation to this in Udupi a couple of years ago. He got so fired up, he sent me all of his Bhakti Godhead collection. So all these publications, we think about 50% of Bhakti Vinod and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's works are still not translated into English. So we want to take that up, and we're going to have 2 imprints, an academic and a general public and devotees. The first publication for the academics is this copy of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's personal diary. Nobody knew this existed. When we unpacked Sundarananda's collection, amongst the 2,500 items that were in there was this folder. This is Sundarananda's writing. So he copied what was the personal diary of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati from 1904 to 1936. So this has been translated, it's been annotated, and this will be the first of a series of about 20 volumes that we want to help the Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies to publish over the next couple of decades. This will establish a very important body of work which is related to our more immediate acharyas, like Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Srila Prabhupada. So this is part of the plan. Apart from all the printed works, we got some inspiration that we should start looking for manuscripts as well. So over the last few years, we've been collecting, mainly we've been scanning the physical items, not so much. This is what we look for. This is a tree bark manuscript, this is a palm leaf manuscript, this is a handmade paper manuscript. This one here, the palm leaf, was one of about 20 that were found floating in the Ganges, because people nowadays have they don't know what to do with them, they don't value them, so they toss them in the river or they burn them. So this is what we've been looking for. We've got a very small collection. All the manuscripts are cleaned up. You wrap them in this red cloth. I just found out recently they use this red cloth because insects don't like the color. It's not, the taste or the smell, but they actually don't like the color red. So you see a lot of places they wrap the manuscripts in red. Now from Sundarananda's collection, we found this handwritten Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is approximately 300 years old, very fragile condition. We've also been visiting other places. This is Sudin Goswami, he's a good friend of ours, from Gaurangatal Mandir in Navadvip. Next to the Lord, you can see that box, and in that box there's a manuscript that's been worshipped for many generations in their line, and it turns out that it is the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam written by Gadadhar Pandit. So he allowed us to photograph the whole thing, and here you can see a closer up of the tiles there, and on this one you can see the body of the text is in one handwriting, the top and bottom line and the end piece are in another, and they say that that top and bottom line are annotations by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. This is what happens when you don't look after them. Sudin Goswami started going around collecting old manuscripts from other temples and private collections, and then he invited us to come and help him clean them up and scan them all. So just a couple of months ago, this is our team, Ashish and Bharati Roy. They went there. There's about 400 manuscripts that they got like that. See the treatment that we're giving them. We clean them up, photograph them, and then wrap them up very carefully and label them and catalogue them. They also went to Bangladesh 2 years ago, just for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, political unrest made it difficult to do anything. But they went to Sylhet, which is where Jagannath Mishra came from, and they found this private library, Ishwara Patsal, at Kumaram. So a very nice place, but nobody's there anymore. The person who established it has died. There's a committee that doesn't do anything. They daren't appeal to the government for help because they're afraid that the Islamic fanaticists will come and burn the place down. So they're in a pickle. They don't know what to do. They've got 9,000 manuscripts and 60,000 books. This is the manuscript collection. So this is a library, and this is how they store everything. Nobody knows what's in here. There's no catalogue. So they've been promising that they'll invite us officially to come and do the cataloguing. You don't know what you're going to find in a heap of manuscripts like this. There could be all kinds of rare works in there. So we want to go back there and do this work. Similarly in Orissa, same story, another private library here, 17,000 manuscripts, 40,000 books. There's places like this all over Bengal, and we'd like to keep this program running so that we can rescue all these works. Right on our own doorstep, the Navadvip Sadarang Grantagar, which is the Namawick Public Library, used to be the Edward VII Anglo-Sanskrit Library. It was an important place for scholars to come and study. They had a very important collection of manuscripts, about 5,000 plus. But a couple of decades ago, people stopped coming. They decided that they wanted to get computerized and get little kids to come to the library, etc. So they put all the manuscripts in a few almirahs and simply locked them away. So after 2 years of negotiation, we persuaded them to allow us to come and help them to clean everything up and catalogue. Again, they don't even have a list of what they've got. And this is a public library. This is how they treat their manuscripts, which is rotting away there. So a couple of months ago, Verity and her husband went there. These two persons are from the library itself. We've been working with them to clean all the manuscripts up and then properly catalogue everything. Apart from the public libraries and such, there's many families that have their own collections. We were contacted last year by the Suramitra family, very aristocratic and important family in Bengal. They have one lady in the family who's a scholar in America. She heard about what we were doing in America. She told the family in Calcutta, and they came around to see what we were doing. This is their genealogy. They came to Calcutta about 250 years ago. This book is about 3 inches thick. They're all, everything, the whole genealogy. This is Swarup Mitra. He's the one that came to see us. He's a very nice man. His parents were initiated by Bon Maharaj, actually. So Krishna Chaitra, Pranava and I went to his place. This is their ancestor, Raja Kutumba Mitra, from Ayodhya. He came about 250 years ago from Ayodhya, first to Mathura, then from there to Calcutta. And this is one of his descendants, Rajendra Lal Mitra. He was the first Indian president of the Asiatic Society, and he was their librarian also. So a very distinguished line. This is a 200-year-old colonial-style house that the joint family were living in. They also have their own temple. They've got about 4 acres of land. And their deity, as it says there, is Ishwar, Baladev Jew, and Gopal Jew. And their deities are Rivati Balaram. And they were actually being worshipped in Ayodhya before they came to Calcutta. So at least for 300 years they've been worshipped. They still have regular puja, they have big festivals. It's very, very nice. And this is their manuscript collection. These are people that know the value of these manuscripts but don't know what to do with them, just gathering dust. So again, they saw what we were doing. They invited us to come. Swarup took us into the home. We went through about 80 or 90 manuscripts. Some of them are quite thick, as you can see. Very important, and mainly all Vaishnava literature as well. Another distinguished guest that we've had is Sanjay Goswami. He's the 14th generation from a line that goes directly back to Advaita Chandra, and he's in charge of the Radha Madan Gopal temple in Vrindavan. He turned up with some box with some 7 or 8 manuscripts in it, and again, some very important stuff. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adikanda from 250 years old, and a complete Chaitanya Charitamrita from 1760. If you remember back in Thakur, it took him several years to find a complete edition or copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So very, very valuable. You can see the condition is deteriorating, so he decided to get us to scan them. And I went to see him about a month and a half ago in Vrindavan, and he showed me a 400-year-old illustrated Quran that they have at the temple there in Vrindavan. So we're going to scan that too. Another very important collection, I mean this was the most important breakthrough that we've had, was at the birthplace of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Vijayanagar. These buildings are exactly 200 years old. They were constructed by the maternal great-grandfather of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Ishwara Chand Mitra. And there are 12 temples. This was a Durga Mandir, it's now a Radha Madhav Mandir. There were 10 Shiva temples with Shiva lingams about 2 feet high. Now all of them have been sent to Shantipur except for one. And there was a Kali temple next door, which has just this last year been restored. So this complex was being run by Lalit Prasad Thakur, the younger brother of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and the land also includes the actual birthplace of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. They built this temple about 60 years ago. There's a picture of the Thakur. So in 72, Prabhupada went there. This is Lalit Prasad. He was 92 when this photo was taken. There you've got Gurudas and Shyama Sundar. Prabhupada was trying to get them to lease some of their land to ISKCON so that we could have a centre there at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's birthplace. He was favourable, but his committee couldn't make a decision. We went again in 1976, same story. I was with Prabhupada in 76 when we visited that time, and again he was favourable, but nothing happened. But in the meantime, in 72, after that, 2 days after that photo was taken, Prabhupada wrote, he said, now expedite the lease agreement immediately and we can take up the work seriously. But nothing happened, as I say. But Achyutananda, he'd been visiting there, and he found that they had a library with many original works by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So he wrote and told Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada immediately told Yadavara to go to Vijayanagar to photograph all the manuscripts page by page very completely before it's too late. They should be preserved for future generations of Vaishnavas to see the original handwriting or actual handwriting and words of such great saintly persons. Treat this matter very seriously and thoroughly and take all precautions to protect this wonderful boon of literature forever. And to Yadavara, these items are very, very priceless, a great treasure house of Vaishnava law. Take all precautions to guard them. So Yadavara actually went there for 1 week. This is a handwritten manuscript by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He did photograph a lot of works, but the main bulk of the library he couldn't get access to. And after 1 week he left. We've since discovered the films that he took in the Prabhupada archives in North Carolina, and we've digitized them. But I found these letters when I was researching something else, so I got very excited about the prospect of fulfilling this desire of Prabhupada to get this collection preserved. So 2 years ago I went back with some of our devotees to Vijayanagar. I met with Vamsidas Babaji, he's the head man there. He was very friendly, contrary to what we've been led to believe. And he showed me around the whole area. And then at the end I asked him, I heard that you've got some original works of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, could I see something? So he had me sit down. 10 minutes later he came back with this book. And it turns out that it's a handwritten copy of the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And you can see again, it's cracking up, it's splitting. So I pointed out to him that, you've got all this stuff, what are you going to do to preserve it? In 40, 50 years' time, there'll be nothing left. So he agreed something had to be done. I told him about the library in Calcutta and the work that we were doing. And 2 days later I sent a taxi to pick him up and bring him to Calcutta. He visited the library, and here you can see he's a disciple of Lalit Prasad. So that's the same picture, he'd never seen them before. And he was very, very happy with what we were doing. 2 months later we met with the committee, management committee, and signed an agreement with them. They were also very happy. And we brought their entire collection to Calcutta. So there was about 181 different works. some handwritten manuscripts, some printed works, and some very, very surprising other documents that we never expected to find, including this letter sent by Srila Prabhupada, handwritten in Bengali, to Lalit Prasad from Moscow in 1971. We don't have this in our database because this is the only copy. Fortunately, Lalit Prasad kept it very carefully, and we have it now in our possession. Prabhupada says there, my dear uncle Prabhupada, Lalit Prasad Thakur. He gives his room number in the hotel where he's staying. He mentions he's going to be preaching on Vedic conception of communism, knowledge derived from authoritative tradition, and scientific classless society. Now, with your blessing in this severely atheistic country, the teachings of Mahaprabhu will be preached. Then he adds that there are local foreigner boys and girls have visited. I've been telling them to chant. A few boys at this place have become very impressed after listening to Harinam and want to join us. But the laws of this country are so tough they cannot go against them. He's talking about Ananta Shanti. This boy met Srila Prabhupada in that 5-day visit to Moscow. In 3 days, Prabhupada taught him the philosophy, he taught him how to cook vegetarian, and he initiated him. And then they left him on his own. And he basically is the founder of the entire Russian Yatra, of which we've got, many thousands of devotees now. Ananta Shanti died in 2013, and the devotees built a nice samadhi for him there in Vrindavan. One of the works that we found in the Birnagar collection was unpublished by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Rasa HariSauriDas. Somebody had decided to try to preserve this work with plastic lamination. They used the wrong plastic, it shrank, and it's destroying the original document. So we got the task now of trying to restore that. But one of the most important document we got from Birnagar is the autobiography by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That's his Kedarnath Dat, Bhaktivinoda, 16th of February, 1895. Again, you can see the bugs have been eating everything away. That's the second page there. He signed it again 6 months later with his own photograph. And this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, describing his life to his son Lalit Prasad. So we're very fortunate that we were able to scan this whole document, and then we've also deacidified it, and we're encapsulating it, which you'll see later on for preservation. In reciprocation, they never asked us for anything. They were happy that we were doing the work for restoration, etc. So in reciprocation, we gave them some grants so that they could build a new prasadam hall. This is halfway under construction. So as far as preservation goes, there's scanning, lamination or encapsulation, and engraving. So scanning, of course, this is what happens when you don't look after your stuff. It just falls apart before your eyes. These are some remnants from the Narya Prakash. So the first thing that we realized we needed was a good professional scanner. We got $27,000 in donations, and we were able to buy this Buckeye from Germany. It takes newspaper size. It's got this V-shaped cradle, so you don't have to break the spine, and the scanner is in the top there. So you can do 2 pages at a time, and you can do thousands of pages a day. So Ashish is our scan man. He's been working very diligently for the last 4 or 5 years. The first thing that we did was the 31 volumes of the accumulated issues of Narya Prakash, the daily newspaper. That's 1 volume right there, and there's 31 volumes like that. Each page was scanned on both sides, 40,000 images. Took 11 months just to do that 1 publication. After that, we deacidified every page. Then we laminated each one with this acid-free tissue paper. And you put a separate strip for binding. You paste it on back and front, And then when it's dried up, then you recombine them, and then we fully indexed everything, and then recovered everything. 60 volumes, just that one publication. And in that publication, there's a history of the entire Gaudium map and the development that they're preaching. Same thing with the Bienaga stuff. This was done last November. This is all the documents we got from Bienaga. Because everything's handwritten in ink. So we do a swab test to make sure that the ink stays fast and doesn't run. We test for acidity or alkalinity and then act accordingly. And then again, the same process, laying them out, scanning them, laminating them, and then preparing them for rebinding. And then here you see this is laminated. The tissue paper actually is transparent, so you can still read everything very clearly, but it enables you to handle the originals without damaging them. And this is a hand press for, they squash all the signatures up, trim them off, getting ready for binding. This is made of wood. Maybe this is the only place in the world they still use these hand mangles for this kind of work. But they're the signatures of the books, and then after binding, this is the end result. So these are nicely laminated and protected. These will be taken back to Bienaga at the beginning of next year. And the ones that we didn't want to laminate, like the Swalekita juveni, we're going to encapsulate. So this pouch is plastic, but it's a special archival plastic called mylar. It's chemically stable, and so it doesn't leach into the document that it's holding. So the autobiography of Bhaktivinoda Thakur will, each sheet will be put into its own separate pouch and stored like that. This is the crew from Bienaga. They came in November to see the preservation work going on. I wanted to make sure that they were happy with it. They were so happy that Niranjan Roy, who is the de facto leader, he invited Bharati to come to his home 2 months ago, and he had his own collection of books, which he gave to the library for scanning and preservation. Some of these are very rare works, but the most, this is a set of Gaudiya Panjikas, the Vaishnav calendar that was being published every year by the Gaudiya Mat. And the most important and exciting find was that he had these 3 letters that were written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and sent to Niranjan Roy's grandfather. This is from October 1916. There's 2 postcards like that. He signs it Vaishnava Dasa Dasanu Dasa, Akinchana Sri Bimal Prasad Siddhanta Saraswati. Then the 3rd item was from 1918, and he mentions in this letter, you may have heard that in the last birth ceremony time, that means Lord Chaitanya, I have taken Tridanda. Now you've been graceful all the time on this worthless fellow, so I can spend the rest of my life in doing service to Sri Gaurasundara. This is written a couple of months after Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took sannyas, and he's telling his friend, I just accepted the Tridanda. And you can see the signature changes. Sri Harijan Kinkara, Tridandi Bhikshu, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati. I mean, there's amazing stuff when you get out there. These things just spring out of nowhere. This man had had those letters in his house for 100 years, didn't know what to do with them. He got so inspired by what we're doing that he, told us, here, you make some scans of these. So scanning is there, and then lamination, and then the other way of protecting things, a digital engraver. These are very powerful machines. This is glass, this is wood, this is metal, this is marble. And these are scanned images that have been burnt into these materials. And like say with the Swalekita juveni, we can get some special kind of archival plastic paper. We can burn each image into that and keep an exact copy of that work long after the originals, rotted away. We'll still have that preserved. So that's the next task that we have, we don't have the engraver yet, but we're getting one this year, and then we'll start the work of preserving through there. This is, again, this was cut and printed on the same laser engraver, so they're very powerful machines. This is Binodananda. He is the youngest son of Sundarananda Vijayvinod. He's the one that gave his father's collection to the Gopinath Gaudiya. They gave it to us. He came to see what we were doing at the library. He was so happy. He wrote there that they're keeping my father's collection very nicely. I like much. And he told me, he said, now I can go home and sleep peacefully. But he'd had that collection in his home for 70 years, and they knew something had to be done, so they're very happy with what we're doing. We had 200 devotees from Delhi on the yatra that came through earlier this year. Pradyumna spent a month with us last year. This year again he's going to come in July. There's the Birnagar crew. Satyanarayan Prabhu is my old friend. He is the BBT trustee for all of Asia. He heard about the work we were doing in Birnagar, on the Birnagar collection, that we needed some money to pay for the preservation work. He immediately sent us $3,000 for that. This is Muni Maharaj from the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. They're just down the road from us in Calcutta. They have a small library, so we went there, and they've come to see ours, and we're having some exchange with them. So it's given us a good platform now to interact with some of the other Gaudiya Maths, which we never had before. So we're building some nice friendly ties with them. This February I showed this same slideshow to the GBC. You can see Ramai Maharaj there is completely gobstruck watching the presentation. Niranjan Maharaj, you can see, very intent. He got so inspired that he sponsored us for 1 month this year, $2,500. This is Smita Krishna Maharaj from Sweden. He's a friend of Pranava's. He's been sponsoring a month a year for the last 3 years. Bhakti Charu Maharaj has been one of our main supporters right from the very beginning. Samba from Mayapur is studying self-sufficiency. So he came and did some research in Sadhuputa's collection. This is Krishna Kripa sorting out Sadhuputa's collection, 17 boxes worth. And this is Rebecca Manring. She's considered to be the leading American scholar on Gaudiya Vaishnavism. She's not ISKCON friendly, but Pranava, of course, he's a PhD. So he heard she was in Calcutta, he invited her over. She didn't know it was ISKCON when she came, but when she saw the library, of course she realized when she walked in the door it was. But she really liked everything. She said this is one of the best libraries that she's seen. So we got some good ties with her now. We have a website, brcindia.com, Bhaktivedanta Research Centre. This is undergoing some reconstruction. We do have the catalogue for Sundarananda's collection, about 2,500 works. Catalogue means the name, it means the author or the editor, the language that it's written in, the script that it's written in, when it was published, etc., etc. Right now we just have the catalogue online, but we're now working to link up the content with the titles so that when you click on a title, you'll bring up the entire work. So here you've got the manuscripts that we've been scanning. So we've got the catalogue, and you can click on the name, and then you'll get the pages of the manuscript. Of course, if you can't read Bengali or Sanskrit, it won't do you much good. But the idea is that, so like the Nadia Prakash, that's 40,000 images. So all of that should be available, but that takes up a huge amount of storage and bandwidth if somebody's reading it online. So we've got an expert programmer in Calcutta right now. He's working on a new solution so that you can click on the title and you can read it page by page, but it only loads one page at a time, not the entire work. that saves the bandwidth. So that's what we're working on. In the same building, I realized if we want scholars and students to come and use the library, they should have somewhere decent to stay. So we made 5 rooms, a small guest house, all air conditioned, attached bath, Wi-Fi, etc. And we've had a good number of scholars come and stay with us so far. And then just this last year, there were 2 flats on the ground floor that were under the ownership of a third party. So we bought him out finally this last year. We've just fixed up the inside. There's a bathroom, there's a kitchen, there's a couple of rooms there for the staff. This is going to be our publications department. So for the future, because book acquisition doesn't mean just looking for old books, any new stuff that's coming out, like from Shivaram Maharaj, Mukunda Maharaj, or anybody else, we're also collecting those, so we gradually grow the library and keep up to date with the latest publications. The manuscript mission, of course, is going on, albeit on a small scale. Scanning and preservation, that's going to go on for many, many years. There's so many books and works that we have, and doing the preservation work is not cheap. We don't do it ourselves, we hire a company to come in and do it, but I think we're going to have to train up our own people so that we can save money on that. Website construction, maintenance, there'll be literally hundreds of thousands of images eventually on the website, so that's got to be well maintained. And then of course we want to translate and publish. That will give us some income to keep things going. In Mayapur we've applied for 50 acres of land for this Mayapur Theological College. Prabhupada in 1975 instructed that he wanted us to have a Mayapur University, so this will be that attempt, and this library will be the core library for that college. And we'll have a PhD, MA, BA program, and we're talking with Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies about becoming an official affiliate of Oxford University. And then we have ties up with other universities in India like Jadavpur. All of this is run by donation. We don't have any source of income other than the goodwill of the devotees. So we have a membership scheme, patron member, adopt a month yearly, and Nitya Sevak. Adopt a month is the main program that we're pushing. It costs $2,500 US per month to run the whole operation, which is probably less than what most average families spend nowadays. We've got about 8 or 9 monthly sponsors. Govinda Valley there from Sydney is one of them, Jayapataka Maharaj, Niranjan Maharaj. We need about half a dozen more so that we've got the whole year covered. That will keep all the basic functions running. Nitya Sevak, we've got a few donors that give $1 a day or $2 a day. Our Govinda Mohini, she's here. She's our $2 a day supporter. Satya Dasi from New Govardhan gives $1 a day. So that way, if we can get maybe 10 or 20 donors, Nitya Sevak members, that will also be a huge help. Then we have a yearly membership, $500 per annum, renewable. And then we have a patron membership, which is a single donation of $10,000 US or above. Bhakti Churu Maharaj again was our first patron member, and he also sends 10,000 rupees a month to help keep things running. Akrura Prabhu from Vancouver, Mahesh Advani from Dubai, they're patron members. Mr. Tooley from Melbourne, I just met him last weekend, very, very nice man. He heard a 2-minute explanation of what the library was at one of the Melbourne Bhakti Vriksha Group meetings. There was only about 15 people there. And he was sitting at the back very quietly. Somebody asked me, can you tell us about the library? So I give a brief explanation. I didn't have any of the slides or anything with me, but he came up at the end and he said, "Oh, I like what you're doing with the library. I'd like to give you something." And I thought he said something about $1,000, which I thought was, wow, he doesn't even know what it is yet, but just that 2-minute explanation. So he said, I'll come on Sunday and I'll give you the money in front of Radha Ballaba. So when he came, he handed me this envelope, and there was $10,000 in it. So a very nice man. He's a retired electrician. He's not like a wealthy businessman, but he's saved his money over many years. And I just heard that recently he gave another $40,000 for the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium construction in Mayapur. Very, very nice man. We met him at the dinner that we had in Melbourne again last week. Jai Shri, expert businesswoman, Pratapana Prabhu, they gave $10,000 to help towards the purchase of the scanner. Madhu Savita from Scotland, his father died, so Janananda Maharaj told him, why don't you give something to the library? So he sent us £16,000. And Raghunath Priya Prabhu from Slovakia is our latest patron member. What we'd like to do eventually is set up an endowment fund. That means you put the principal in the bank and never spend it. You only draw from the interest. In India, the interest rate is about 9.3% now. It's very high. So if we had a crore of rupees in the bank, it's about $200,000. That would give about 80,000 rupees a month in interest, which would pay for all the basic running costs. So these are our contacts, brcindia.com. We have a PayPal, Lotus Imprints, or you can use my Gmail account for that, HariSauri@gmail, and then I have a PayPal account as well. So that's it. That's our latest endeavour with the Bhaktivedanta Research Centre. So I hope you all enjoyed that. If anybody has any questions, I can try and answer, or if anybody's coming to Mayapur, please take a detour, come into Calcutta and stay. We have guest rooms, you can stay overnight and you can see all this transcendental literature. When you're in the library, it's like being in Vaikuntha. You're just surrounded by all this transcendental literature, original works by Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. It's really an amazing experience, and it's a real privilege to be involved in developing it, because this platform of preaching is for everybody. Yeah, all the Vaishnavas can take advantage of this. This is something that many future generations of devotees will be able to access. So as Prabhupada said, it should be preserved, it must be preserved for future generations of Vaishnavas. So this is a small attempt. So far Krishna's been very kind. He's supplied what we need to keep it all going, and I take it that that means that he has some confidence that what we're doing is a good work. So anyway, come and see us, and I can guarantee you'll be amazed at what you see there. Now, any questions or comments? Okay. No? Okay. All right, so then we'll finish at this point. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.